Let's add few more registry helper classes. Hello everyone, this is Ali Reza. Welcome to the Mentor Code Lab. In previous episodes, we added two classes for registering the item and the block. Today, we will talk about registering the entities, the recipe, the component type, a status effect, and the screens. These are simple enough, but I did go on ahead and added few parts to each class, namely the mod IDs, the constructors, and then the bare minimum skeleton of each method that I want to handle. Don't worry, I will walk you through every single one of them. For registering a block entity, we need to return the block entity type of some block entity. So the generic here is R extending the block entity. However, what we are returning is block entity type of that block entity extension. Now we want the name, the block related to this block entity, and the block entity type builder, the factory inside of it of type block entity. Now each one of these methods start by the key because we need the key to register, and each one of them is registry type of something. And when we are getting the key, we are producing the key type that we want. You can pause the video and type them if you need to. Then we have another method. This method is for registering any other entity type, means any mob or anything else that is extending the entity and not the block entity. Again, here we are returning entity type of an entity, and we ask for the entity type dot entity factory of that entity, and we get the key. This is for registering any type of entity, being block entity or anything else. So let's start with block entity. You will say block entity type of R, we call it BE type, equals to fabric block entity type builder dot create, and here we want to send in the factory and the block, and after that we call the build, and inside here I think we will send in null. Let's see, I think this is new. Build is deprecated. Replace method with fabric build. So the null is deprecated now. Thank you. Then we have a block entity type of R. Actually, we can directly return it. So return registry from netminecraft registry.registry.register. And here we want registries.block entity type. We have the key and we have the type. So we register it and we return the result. The entities are almost identical, so I will copy them. I will paste it. This is entity type, and I will call it entity type equals to entity type dot builder. So put a dot here, and create factory, and here we don't have any block. We will use spawn group dot miscellaneous or anything else. I can accept it actually here, so I will accept it because I think it would be useful. So spawn group, and we call it the spawn group, and here we send in the spawn group because we may want to spawn a mob or something else. We should have the flexibility, and here inside the build we will provide the key. Now when we are returning, this is not block entity type, this is entity type, and instead of BE we have entity type, and we return it. You can pause the video, you can check everything and make sure that your code is correct. This is our G entity register, and of course I have added every one of those classes to the main so that when we import our library we are ready to roll. Now for recipes, normally you have one registry inside here, so you get the key. Now for registries you have two different methods. Let me explain them. Here we want to return a recipe serializer of something. Now R here is a recipe of type of something else, and that something else is recipe input. So basically we want to return something like this. What we are returning is recipe serializer of type recipe of type recipe input. This is what we are returning, but we are making it generic. So we are returning a recipe serializer. That recipe serializer is of type something. That something is a recipe of something, and it's a recipe of a recipe input. That is this generic here. Basically, we are defining D as recipe input. We are defining R as a recipe of D, and then we are returning recipe serializer of R. The whole result will be something like this. And inside here, we ask for a name and the serializer of R. So we get the key and we return, let me cheat. I want this registry.register all the time. So we want to return registry.register. This time we want registries.recipe serializer. We have the key, and finally we have the serializer as the input. The second method is for the recipe type. And again, we are returning a recipe type of a recipe of a recipe input. So the same explanation goes here. Finally, we return the registry.register of registries.recipe type with the key and with the recipe type that we provided by the method parameters. And that is our recipe serializer. Of course, we had instantiated it inside main. Let's go for custom data component types. Now, I didn't put data on the name because, first of all, it would make the name too big. And second of all, I'm not sure if we will have any other component type in the future that we can use, and we can associate this class with any component registration later. Right now, all we have is the component types for a custom component type. Now take note, we are defining R, but we are not limiting R to any subclass type. This is the most generic way of addressing anything. Basically, we are saying that R can be anything, and we want a component type of anything being registered. Now, here is the thing we are accepting for a name, and then unary operator of type component type dot builder of that object that we want to use, and we call it build operator. After getting the data component type registry key, we return the registry.register, of course, registries.data component type with the key, and finally we will say build operator dot apply, and inside here we will say component type dot builder, and at the second parenthesis we say dot build, and that's it. So we are calling builder on component type, and then it returns a component type of a generic type. It will return a component type dot builder of generic type, and that is exactly what we need inside apply, and we are calling the build at the end, and finally we will return the component type of something. Now, as you can say, something like this is really complex, but calling register with a name with a build operator is much more simpler, and you will see it in action after we finished our register library. Then we have the status effect. Now, status effect again is returning a registry entry of a status effect. We accept a name, a category, a color, then a by function of the category and integer with a status effect. We call it factory. Now, here is the thing. We say status effect, we call it effect equals to factory.apply, and here we want the category and the color. This will create a status effect for us. Now, here is the thing. We won't call register. We call register reference because we want the registry entry of the status effect, not the status effect itself. And here we say registries.status effect, comma, the key, and finally we created the effect using the factory and we return it. That's the whole thing. Now finally it's time for the screen handler. As you can say, the generic is crazy. Basically we have two different parts as the generic that we want to return. We want to return extended screen handler type of two things. So the first one is R, that is a screen handler, and the second one is a custom payload. So we have the screen handler, we bind a custom payload to it, and we return extended screen handler type from this method. Now what we need is a name, and then the extended screen handler type dot extended factory, and then the packet codec. Now again, here we are using anything that is registry byte BOF and the custom payload here for the codec. Don't worry, this will make sense when we want to register our screens later. It's really simple. This is really simple. This is really simple. So don't worry about it. Then you will say return registry.register registries.screen handler comma key comma new extended screen handler type, and inside the parentheses we send in factory and the codec as the parameters for the factory of parameters for the class, and this is a generic class. And finally we have our smaller classes that we needed. All that is remaining to cover is the armor, and after the armor we have some classes for datagen that we want to cover, and those two are a little bit complex because things have changed between the different versions of Minecraft, and I want to make sure that I know what I'm doing because I don't want to rewrite this library from scratch for those two sections. So each one of them will have its own dedicated video. For time being, we have covered almost every common registry, and what we are going to cover more is something like armor materials and one registry for the armors and things like that. You will see it in next videos. If you like these videos, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button and turn on that bell so that when I publish a new video, you will get informed. Have fun everyone. Bye.